viewers live now to the Gold Coast, the opposition leader Tony Abbott there. Let's hear from him.
Kenton Campbell and all the staff of Zarraffas Coffee for making Stewie, Robert and me so welcome. This is one of the tens of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses right around Australia which is going to be very seriously impacted by the carbon tax. The carbon tax impacts on power and on transport. We need power to roast coffee. We need transport to get the coffee out to the restaurants and cafes where it's used. Because every single price in our economy is dependent upon power and transport, every single price in our economy is going up and up and up under the carbon tax. Now, Kenton expects that the price of a cup of coffee could go up by as much as 25 cents as a result of the carbon tax. So you turn on your light, you pay. You open the fridge, you pay. You get on a plane, you pay. You buy a cup of coffee, you pay under this toxic tax. So I say to the people of Australia, the best way right now to reduce the pressure on your cost of living is to change the government, because only a coalition government will repeal this toxic tax. Now, I might also just observe that the Prime Minister's speech in Perth today is an admission of failure. She says today in Perth that it is necessary to return the budget to surplus to take the pressure off interest rates. Well, that means that for the last 4 years you have been paying more in your mortgage because this government can't manage the economy. It is an absolute admission of failure. It is an absolute condemnation out of the Prime Minister's own mouth of what they have been doing for the last 4 years, because for the last 4 years this government has given us the 4 biggest deficits in Australian history, and the Prime Minister's own words accept that this has put serious upward pressure on interest rates that the government could have avoided. Yep. Now, I'm going to ask Stewie to say a few words, then I think Kenton would like to say a few words, and then we'll take some questions.
Look, thanks, Tony, for coming along to Zarraffas. This is one of the great Gold Coast businesses. This is a business with over 50 stores, a business that employs over 1,000 people. Zarraffas is a business that has won every single Gold Coast Business Excellence Award available, including taking out the most excellent Gold Coast business numerous times. The carbon tax is going to hurt this business. The carbon tax is going to increase the prices on this business. And the last thing Gold Coasters need right now is extra pricing, higher costs for goods and services and electricity. The Gold Coasters right now need a break. We need a government to come and help us, to government to support us. And all the Gillard government is doing right now is increasing costs higher and higher and higher.
Kenton?
Look, thank you very much for coming today, Tony and Stuart. Look, the fact is that I started this business 16 years ago with the high hopes, entrepreneurial hopes of building a business bigger than me. I've done that, and now I'm in a situation of growth. And we've just purchased next door for that growth. I want to employ more people, but under a tax like this, a tax which we get no benefit for, it just tends for somebody like me to think, well, maybe I can hold on just that little bit longer and not grow the business. Maybe I'll hold on just that little bit longer and see what happens. The fact is I'm not that way. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to go out and grow, and I'm going to hope that Tony at some point is running this great country of ours. From my point of view, the people that think carbon tax is going to do well and then go on to be a cap and trade, it's simply like smoking, getting cancer, and then expecting to trade it to someone else. It doesn't work that way. I'm more about stopping carbon and stopping the pollutants that get out there in the first place. So I appreciate you guys' time today, taking a look at our business, and I hope the best in the future.
Thanks so much. Okay, do we have any questions?
Yeah, in light of Joe Hockey's remarks saying Western countries must reduce the sense of entitlement that sees a growing amount of GDP spent on welfare, how are you going to stop the spend on welfare, and what are you going to cut?
Well, Joe was making the very obvious point. that governments have got to live within their means. Countries have got to live within their means. And he was making the obvious point that if you look at a country like France, they spend double on social programs as a percentage of GDP than Australia. Even Britain spends 50% more on social programs as a percentage of GDP than Australia. That level of spending is unsustainable, and frankly, the way this government has been spending over the last few years, there is a danger that we ourselves could ultimately go down an unsustainable path. We haven't got there yet, and it's the job of the coalition to ensure that we never do.
Are those comments a bit rich, considering your plan for a paid parental scheme of up to $75,000 a year?
Well, the difference between my proposal and the situation in Europe is that my proposal for a fair income paid parental leave scheme is fully funded. The other point that I make is that if we can get more women into the workforce, we boost participation, we boost productivity, and therefore we grow the economy. So this is actually an economically beneficial development, not an economically harmful development.
The Prime Minister appears to be putting pressure on the Reserve Bank of Australia. Do you think that's a step too far?
The independence of the Reserve Bank is an established fact. I say, thank God, the Reserve Bank is independent. If the government is serious about taking pressure off interest rates, it would get its own spending under control. It would get its own borrowing under control. Whilst ever the government is borrowing $100 million every single day, it is putting upward pressure on your interest rates.
Should you be calling for a surplus to assist the RBA to cut interest rates?
Well, we've been calling for a surplus for years now. That is in the DNA of the coalition. Taxes will always be lower. Spending will always be lower. The fiscal position will always be better under the coalition, because in the marrow of our bones is the conviction that government has always got to live within its means.
Stephen Smith, he's refusing to provide detail of the Australian Defence Force commitment in Afghanistan after the main troop withdrawal. What Special Forces commitment should be in there?
Look, the last thing I would want to do is to play politics over our support for the armed forces in Afghanistan. I want to say that it's very important that our troops in Afghanistan understand that they have the full support of the Australian people, the full support of the Australian Parliament, and that's what they'll always get from me.
You've had a briefing on Afghanistan. Are you satisfied with the government's timetable?
I think it's very important that we do everything we have to do to ensure that the gains that have been made thanks to Australian forces at such a high cost to Australian forces are not squandered, and that's why it's very important to carefully and continuously monitor the situation on the ground.
Just back to interest rates, is it appropriate for the Prime Minister to try and pressure the RBA to actually lowering rates?
Well, the best thing that the Prime Minister could do to get interest rates down is to stop borrowing $100 million every single day. I mean, the Prime Minister has admitted that her economic policy for the last 4 years has been a failure. If it's so important to deliver a surplus to get interest rates down, what does that say about the impact of the 4 biggest deficits in Australian history? That has been putting upward pressure on your mortgage rate for 4 years. Now, if the Prime Minister's fair income about helping borrowers, she will stop borrowing herself $100 million every single day.
Just back to the carbon tax, Mr. Abbott, just wondering whether or not you support local mayoral candidate Tom Tate's stance on the carbon tax. He says that if elected he will refuse to pay it.
Well, I certainly think that council rates are going to go up and up and up under the carbon tax, because the best estimate seems to be that as a result of the carbon tax, councils will have to raise rates by about 3% to cover emissions from their landfill sites. Now, this is yet another example of how the carbon tax is going to hurt people. Turn on the light, you pay. Open the fridge, you pay. Get on the plane, you pay. Buy a cup of coffee, you pay. Go to the tip, you pay, because of the carbon tax. So I can understand that Councillor Tate wants to get rid of it, and I think every mayor in Australia ought to want to get rid of this toxic tax. Thanks.
A small coffee-making business on the Gold Coast. The opposition leader Tony Abbott there maintaining his rage about the carbon tax, predicting the price of a cup of coffee could go up 25 cents a cup after the carbon tax is imposed in a couple of months' time.
And he says the Prime Minister's speech in Perth today, pressuring the Reserve Bank on interest rates, is an admission of failure, that Australians have been paying more for their mortgages because of the government's budget deficits.
25 to 11 Eastern. Now the weather. The forecasts in the north: late thunder in Darwin, possible shower in Cairns, mostly sunny in Brisbane, windy with rain in Sydney and Newcastle. Rain for Canberra.